What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be having an old-fashioned showdown between two cameras. You're going to want to stick around for this if you're in the market for a new camera. Today we're going to be going head-to-head with the Sony Hx80 and the Canon G7X Mark II. So, here's the deal. I was always the biggest proponent of the Sony Hx80, but I started to run into some issues that I didn't like with the camera. I still use it. There were just little things about it that I was just kind of like, man, you know what? Maybe I'll start looking around for something else. First and foremost, the little tripod mount on the bottom. This thing was a problem. Just a few months into buying the camera, it's stripped because it's plastic. That's ridiculous. So what had to happen was I had to drill out the bottom of this camera and I had to inset a metal tripod screw. I had a few other issues with the camera. Just the fact that it's so hard to shoot in low light, but you need light to make this camera look good. Okay? Every camera is different. Every sensor in every camera between different brands and all that stuff, it's all different. So that was another thing that was bothering me, and that was enough for me to start thinking, how can I make my life a little bit easier? How can I film in lower light situations with a secondary camera? Because I don't always want to bring out my DSLRs. Like, I don't like taking them everywhere I go. The G7X Mark II was always an option. I just did not want to spend that type of money on this camera. But the other day I walked into Best Buy for a camera strap and I walked out with a G7X Mark II and a camera strap. I don't know how that happened. I was under some sort of spell. Super quick note, if you want the Canon G7X Mark II but you don't want to spend all the money on it, check out the link below. It's the first thing in the description. It's a great website if you want to trade in some of your old gear and get some new gear in return. You can find a G7X Mark II for only a little over 500 bucks. All right, so let's get to it. We're gonna put these cameras head to head and see which one comes out victorious. G7X Mark II, Sony Hx80. All right, so right off the bat, Canon G7X has a touchscreen. The Sony Hx80 does not. So both of them have the flip out screens, which is great. When you're vlogging, that really helps because you're able to see yourself whenever you're filming. When we're talking about photography, you know, whatever. This thing shoots raw. This one does shoot very high resolution photos, but the files are not raw. This one is 20 megapixels. This one is 18 megapixels, which in the grand scheme of things, that's not a big difference. It's really not at all whatsoever. It's an 11% difference between the two cameras, all right? Maximum ISO on this dude, 3200. The max ISO on this dude right here, 12,800. Not that I would ever recommend even going this high unless you absolutely had to get something on tape. Like, if you're filming out in the woods and you happen to run across a Sasquatch for the good of all society, then by all means, get your camera up to 12.8 and you're good. One really cool thing that the G7X Mark II has that the Sony Hx80 does not have is time-lapse mode. Now, this is very cool. I've used it, puts it all together for you, and you don't have to do much of the work. The maximum aperture for the G7X Mark II is an incredible 1.8. This is why I bought this camera. This is what makes this camera worth all the money, okay? That, the max aperture. Because this allows you to shoot in lower light. That means that the sensor is more sensitive to light, okay? This guy over here, the max aperture on this 3.5. Again, if you have enough light, 3.5 will suffice. Everything is fine with that. So the max aperture zoomed in for the G7X Mark II is 2.8. Over on this side, we've got some problems, okay? Zoomed in, our minimum aperture goes to 6.4. 6.4. That is disgusting. These two settings right here are why this camera is very cheap. Another win for the G7X Mark II is built-in ND. That's fantastic. All right, so we've got built-in neutral density filters in this camera. So when you're out and you're in too much light, you can choose the settings that you want and still, you know, get the look that you're going for. All right, the Sony Hx80, no ND. So let's talk about a few of the wins that Sony has here. If you're into photography at all whatsoever, the Sony Hx80 has a pop-up viewfinder. My mic muff was covering the viewfinder, but that's where it's at. I'm gonna put that back down because I don't use this thing for photography. No viewfinder for the G7X Mark II. The Sony has tremendous battery life. This thing films forever and ever. We're getting 390 shots per battery over here. And with the Canon G7X Mark II, we are coming in at 265 shots. 245 grams is how much the HX80 weighs. This thing weighs 319 grams. It's heavy for a point and shoot. Here's the biggest thing, okay? We're gonna talk about price, all right? Because that's the big issue. This camera, the G7X Mark II, listed at a whopping $690. That's a bummer. Tax and all that stuff, I ended up paying $740. That is a lot of money. That is a lot of money. This guy over here, right now, this camera is only $298. When I bought it a year ago, I believe it was $335. The Sony Hx80 is half the cost of the G7X Mark II. You know, for $740 over on this side, the Sony Hx80, you could get a lighting kit. You could get a whole video making setup, all right, for the cost of the G7X Mark II. It all is dependent on footage. All right, so let's take a look at some test footage and you guys can see for yourselves. The reason that the Hx80 is so much darker than the Canon G7X is because I have these set at the exact same settings, okay? Both cameras are set to an aperture of 3.5. Our shutter speed is 1/50th of a second, and our ISO is set at 400. It's the sensor size, okay? In the Canon G7X, we have a 1-inch sensor. In the Sony Hx80, we have a micro 2/3 sensor. The sensor size and the difference between the two is absolutely just insane. Right now, this isn't even as bright as I could shoot with the Canon G7X Mark II. I would have to go to ISO 3200 on the Sony Hx80 to get something similar to the shot I'm getting with the Canon G7X. So let's go ahead and do that. I have adjusted the ISO on the Sony Hx80 to 3200. All right, now this is where we run into problems. There, if you look at my shirt, you can start to see a little bit of noise with the Sony Hx80, where on this side with the G7X, you're not seeing any noise because our ISO is low. Over here on the G7X, it's crystal clear and very bright, very vivid. It's got a good look to it. Both cameras are white balanced to the same temperature. You can see that the Hx80 it's a lot warmer than the Canon G7X. I actually kind of prefer a warmer look, but the footage on the G7X really looks a lot better. We can do some kind of like crazy Inception type shit. That would be fun. I thought maybe they would blow up, but they're not. All right, so here we are back to the drawing board. In the very beginning, both cameras were rocking these settings right here. The Hx80 was much darker. The horrible picture quality. We went ahead and tried to bring the Sony Hx80 up to the level of the Mark II, and we increased our ISO to its max aperture at 3200. But the problem with going in here is that you're gonna get tons of noise, and that is why your footage looks like utter shit, okay? As long as you have enough light available to you, the Sony Hx80 will do just fine. The G7X Mark II is very expensive, but the settings that it has for low light capabilities are just off the chart. It's phenomenal. So like I said, this camera right here ran me, with tax and everything, $740. If you don't want to pay that much money, check out the link that I have down below. It's the top link on the description. It's a very cool website. You can trade in your old gear and pick up some new gear. Everything on there is used but very excellently well maintained. You could pick up the Canon G7X Mark II in excellent condition for $540. That's insane. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe and comment down below. Tell me everything that you know about these cameras and tell me everything that you want to know about these cameras. All right, we'll see you guys later. Have a killer weekend.